Good morning, Livermore. How are you all? I'm really happy to be back. I wish it was because only of my sparkling personality and my wit. But we love Harriet Hawkins. And San Jose stands with you. We have held her and lifted her in prayer. And you know there's something to this prayer stuff, right? Because she's home and she's recuperating and she'll be back here in no time. I know that. We all know that, yes? So thank you. And thank you for being here. I can't tell you as a minister how important it is to know that, you know how we keep all these balls in the air and then every now and then life comes along and takes one and throws it sideways, right? And the beauty of knowing that our community is there for one another and holding down the fort and just loving one another, it gives her more freedom actually to take care of herself and do what needs to be done so that she'll be back here in no time, which we know, yes. So I am talking today about what would love do, which there's a coincidence. And I know that the topic was maybe supposed to be unconditional love, and that's an interesting topic because me personally, for me, I'm only talking for me, not our teaching, that's a weird one for me because in order for love to be, in order for anything to be unconditional, that means there would have had to have been conditions in the first place, and love doesn't have conditions. So I'm not sure how this whole unconditional love conversation got started. But today I want to talk to you about a couple of things. I want to talk to you about Science of Mind as a user's manual. I want to talk to you about when love shows up as toilet paper, and sometimes silence. And then I hope to leave you with 3 strategies that you can keep in mind if you have to make tough choices, if you're facing, one of those balls that life threw sideways, if you're feeling powerless maybe, or just navigating Tuesday, right? There's strategies that we can have in place. And I laugh at myself because I have been a student of Science of Mind probably for 18 years now. Many of you have probably been in it longer than that even, but I found the teaching 18 years ago, and I teach spiritual principle all the time. And for the most part, I live in spiritual principle all the time, until I don't, right? But I strive to live in spiritual principle and walk in principle all the time. But I'm also having human experiences every day, right? Unfortunately, when you graduate ministerial school, there's no magic minister dust where they go, that's it, you are now immune to the world. It's like, no, that doesn't happen. And Harriet was one of my teachers, so, I have a bone to pick with her because there's a lot she didn't teach in that class. There are also things that happen sometimes in the world, sometimes in life, sometimes in my center, that make my heart heavy. Do you have those days? It doesn't mean that love is absent. It doesn't mean that God went anywhere or disappeared, because that's impossible. But having that human experience, I can be heavy-hearted. I can think, wow, there's too much today. There's too much news. There's too many headlines. I always look at the headlines not as a condition of the world, but certainly to know what my prayer work is, right? That's the best way to look at the headlines. What will I pray about today? And at those times, I have to rely even heavier on our teaching, more than I usually do. I have to go back to basics. I have to grab my user's manual, right? Ken Gordon, do you all know who Ken Gordon is? He's our community spiritual leader. If our denomination had a pope, it would be Ken. And I remember his words when he said, the science of mind is almost like a computer for which we have not read the owner's manual, right? So we're just using it for the surface stuff. I can keep my calendar and do a Word document. But when you think about technology and computer technology, it does way more than that. If we dive into it, if we, dive into the user's manual. And I heard that, and this week that came up so much more for me for so many reasons. I have a 6-month-old granddaughter. I may have told you that a month ago. Her name is Brooklyn, and she's adorable. And I was taking a selfie of she and I the other day, and I have an iPhone, and she was trying to grab it while I was taking the selfie. And in the course of doing that, she had put her finger right on the photo button. Do you know that when you hold that button down, you get something like 37 pictures? And look at you nodding. I did not know that. I did not read that user's manual. Not at all. I also found out that there's a way to set my phone that's called Siri Speak. So that if I get a text message, I simply hit a button and Siri reads it to me. Right? Look at your face. I know. And somebody showed me that the other day. I did not know that. I am not good at reading the user's manual. So I decided that for this, on those certain days, I have to go back to the user's manual. It's sometimes, we use it sometimes in our center, we use it as an oracle. Right, do you want to try, Sharon, do you want to try something with me? You can stay there. I'm going to go like this. You tell me when to stop. Okay. And then, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Abe? Dave. Dave, tell me left or right. Left. Okay. Top, middle, or bottom of the page? Somebody else. Middle. Here we go. One should analyze themselves saying, do I look at myself from a standpoint of restriction? Do I see life limited to the eternal round of getting up in the morning, eating, going to work, coming home, going to bed, sleeping, getting up again, and so on? Break the bonds of apparent necessity and see life as one continuous expression of the infinite self. And as this conception gradually dawns upon the inner thought, something will happen in the outer conditions to relieve the greater demands of necessity. Did that mean something to anybody in the room? That's how it happens when you consult the oracle, just that simple. It's that. So now, in our center, we started doing that at the top of meetings. Let's consult the oracle. If we have, for our meditation, we just do that. We just look at one another and say, okay, flip. Sometimes it's just stick your finger in and pick a page, kind of thing. So I was having a recent struggle, and it was something that felt like, it almost felt like a bullying situation. Like someone was not being their best self, and it seemed as if there was a sense of mean-spiritedness, which is, you know how out of place that is in your spiritual home? It's like, that doesn't go. That's like mustard on raisin bread. Right? That doesn't go. So we started consulting the oracle, and I started asking the question over and over again, what would love do? What would love do? Because it could be so easy to just have an upset. You know, upsets they're easy. It's like I can be on an upset in a heartbeat. I could stub my toe and turn it into an upset. But then I have to change my bracelet, and you know what happened with that, right? Notice it's on this arm. The Science of Mind, the other book, Living the Science of Mind, on page 331, it says, love is the victor in every case. Love breaks down the iron bars of thought. It shatters the walls of material belief. It severs the chain of bondage which thought has imposed and sets the captive free. I mean, that is really powerful. When we think about love with that capital letter, it becomes so profound, and it just everything starts to deteriorate, like all the upset. It just starts to fall away. And so in my prayer work, in my meditation work, that's where the questions started coming up for me. What would love do? What would love do? And I find that sometimes in the midst of an upset or when a hard decision has to be made. Facing challenges. I tend to ask, and maybe many of you do, we tend to go to questions. Questions like, well, how did that happen? Or what's that about? Or how can I help? Or what can I do? Or then I start in with, what's wrong with me? Or if I'm really having a bad day, I may go to, what's wrong with them? Right? What's wrong with them? What's wrong with people? How can that happen? But then you have to kind of change the questions. Those questions don't work. There is a direct correlation between the answers I get and the questions I ask. A direct correlation. Because questions like that, what's wrong with them, what's wrong with me, what am I supposed to do, even how can I help, which is very well-meaning, the answers I get may be interesting, but not helpful. And they may be interesting, but not inspiring. They may not be inspiring answers. So I've started to change the question lately, and I find that when I ask what would love do, it alters everything. Everything is altered when I ask that question. Mike Robbins is an author, and he said, love is the most powerful force in the universe, yet so many of us, myself included, almost apologize for talking about it, right? In the normal, in the secular world, right? We apologize for talking about it, thinking about it, and wanting to have it play a lead role in our lives. And forgive me for a sweeping generalization, but oftentimes it's worse for our male, for our brothers in life. Because men aren't supposed to be like the lovey, feely, touchy, they're supposed to be the hunter-gatherers and things. So it's even harder. My son talked about that recently, how having this 6-month-old little girl in his life now, a whole new ball game. So life occurrences that leave us feeling helpless can either be huge, huge otherworld things, grand scale things, the terrible devastation in the Bahamas, right? Yet another shooting in Odessa, Texas, a couple of weeks ago. Fires that decimate entire cities and communities. I mean, these are big, but there are small ones. There's the smaller, more personal occurrences, right? A betrayal. Someone coming at you in your spiritual home, maybe forgetting who they are, right? And there's a hurt that occurs. The loss of a loved one in a community, a broken relationship. We are at the second anniversary. Last month was the second anniversary of, there was a couple in our community, and they were literally pillars of our community. Their handprint was on everything in our community. I still open I have a storage closet in my office, and I still open it, and I see like everything ordered with little Dymo labels. And that was Cynthia, bless her heart. She would come in. She came to the center every day to volunteer, every day. She lived right down the street and just wanted to be in service. They were an older couple, and I still don't have 100% of the story. I don't need it. But 2 years ago, in last August, they made a decision to leave this world together. They had everything in place. They even wrote an apology note to the police. They said, we're sorry you were the ones that had to find us, but please know this was well planned. We lived in love, and we went out on our own terms. And they were an elder couple. And it rocked our community to the core. And what would love do? How do you even wrap your head around that? And the only thing I could think to do was to immediately get to the center, unlock it, open the doors, light candles, and then telephone our practitioners and let them know the center. And we put out a newsletter. We put it on social media. We immediately sent like an email to every one of our subscribers and said, we stand with you in grief and know that for the next 48 hours, the center will be open from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. There will be practitioners on hand to pray. There was soft music playing. And then people started showing up with food, right? Donuts showed up and cookies showed up and fruits and veggies and cheese and crackers. And people could just come and be, because that's really all anybody needed, was to be in community and to be with one another. And it was such a simple thing to do, but to me it proved that love holds up regardless of the magnitude of the situation, right? Love is so powerful. Matt Kahn is also, I think also an author, but he's definitely a motivational speaker. And Matt once said that love is dynamic, love is courageous, and love is bold. It's not showy. Love doesn't walk in and say, I'm here to love today, so you can all sit down, I got this, because I'm showing up as love today, it's all good, I got it. Love doesn't do that, The ego requires an audience all the time, right? That's very different, because the ego turns everything into a performance, right? But love doesn't do that. Love is dynamic and bold, yes, but it's solemn, and it's humble, and it's peaceful, and it just gives. It gives with no attachment to how it's received. The other thought that comes to mind when I think about that, just love, being love. Mr. Rogers, have you all heard the story about when he was a child? He said that whenever he was struggling with something that was happening in the world, his mother used to tell him, look for the helpers. Look for the helpers. It's something that I still remember. Look for the helpers. So, toilet paper. I will tie this together, I promise. Okay, no, I don't promise that. Colleen Arnold is a medical doctor. She's also an author, and in 2018, she wrote a blog. She simply wrote a blog relating to the story about when her husband passed away. They had been married for quite a while, but it's that perfect example of the helpers. She wrote this blog, and she said on the day after her husband died, and it was the day before all the out-of-towners were going to be piling in, right? They had a big family. Her dear friend Carol showed up at the door, and when she opened the door, she saw Carol standing there with tears streaming down her face as she confessed, I have no idea what to say, and there's only one thing I could think of to do to help. She said, I knew the house would be full of guests, maybe for the entire week, maybe even longer than that. And then Colleen said she stood there as she watched her friend Carol make trips back and forth from her car with boxes of toilet paper, paper towels, paper plates, napkins, cups, utensils, because she said casseroles are going to be arriving, and people are going to be arriving. And there were paper cups to share the tea, there were Kleenex to hold the tears. And that's what she did. She brought toilet paper to supply the huge crowd. She brought Kleenex for the tears. And whenever I think of that, I think, what would love do? Love would bring toilet paper. How simple, but how profound a gesture. I brought toilet paper. I was invited to speak, this was a couple years ago, at our Oakland Center for Spiritual Living. I had a great talk prepared. And I got a phone call the day before that they had a practitioner emeritus who had been the pillar of that community, of the whole prac community. Everybody knew her, and she passed away the day before my talk. And I walked in that morning with a pack of toilet paper. And I told him, I said, I brought toilet paper. I've never forgotten that story. Because love shows up peacefully with humility and non-attachment. And there are times where I worry, wow, I have nothing to say. I worried about that when I had to go to Oakland. I didn't worry about it here so much because I know Harriet Hawkins. She'll be back any minute now. Love can also show up empty-handed. That's the other thing that's really profound about love. There was another minister, a Universalist minister, who was also a chaplain. Her name is Kate, I don't want to mispronounce this, but I believe it's pronounced Beauchamp in French. She lost her husband, a sheriff, to a car accident while he was on duty. She was young, he was young, and she had 4 young children, very young children. But she said for the rest of her career, she's well past it now, for the rest of her career, she remembered that when people are in deep grief, when she shows up, she tells them, I'm not here to keep you from freaking out. I'm here to be with you while you freak out. Or to give a laugh, or to grieve, or to suffer with you, or to sing with you. It is a ministry of presence. It is showing up with a loving heart. So it always goes back. It goes back to that question, what would love do? It shows up to be a ministry of presence. Sometimes it brings toilet paper. Sometimes it's extremely quiet. Sometimes it puts on soft music and has a casserole. Sometimes you just have to look for the helpers because they're everywhere. They're everywhere in the midst of any disaster. Who's the chef? Chef Andres opened up his hotel in the Bahamas, and he's making 10,000 sandwiches a day to feed people in the Bahamas. There was a cruise ship that showed up, and all the staff on the cruise ship are cooking and feeding people every day. So when you ask what would love do, you then have a powerful self-examination. That's what that becomes for me, a powerful self-examination where I get to turn from righteousness or even outrage, right? I can be addicted to outrage any second, any minute. It can happen like that. I have that hair trigger. Like if I'm watching the news, I start yelling at the television. I'm like, oops, oops. What would love do? Someone with whom you have a conflict, someone that maybe has triggered a hurt or has hurt you in the past, someone in the news, whomever it might be. There is a trigger that can happen. Matt Kahn, the speaker I just talked about, he says that we're all a bunch of amateur Santas. We walk around with our naughty or nice list, right? This person gains my favor today, you not so much. And it's just so silly. It's so silly, really, because the longing, at least for me, the longing in my heart, is to move through the world as love in form. Because we have incarnated, each and every one of us, we have incarnated to be an expression of creation and to be and do only what we can do, right, as God in form. And God is synonymous with love. So it just becomes so silly then when like some little outrage comes up. But here's one of the strategies. In fact, you could do it right now if you're so willing to close your eyes for just a minute. And if there is anyone that kind of triggers that little bit of angst for you, or maybe, dare I say, outrage, it could be that neighbor that just won't park their car without taking up 2 spots. It could be something that you recently read on Twitter. It could be someone from your past. That family member that's getting on your last nerve. If you bring them into your mind's eye, I invite you to offer them a blessing. I know that last month you were studying the Book of Blessings. But when you think about it, that's what love would do. Love would bless that person with all the joy that their heart desires. Let's take a deep breath. It changes everything, doesn't it? It's hard to be mad at somebody when you're praying for them. It's hard to be upset with anybody when you're praying for them. And you could do something simple, like my mantra is always, I raise you, I praise you, I release you to your highest good. And if I'm really upset, I say, I release you to your highest and farthest good. Sometimes that works. Karen Drucker wrote a beautiful song. She actually wrote a song, What Would Love Do? And the lyric says, love has all the answers. Love makes no demands. Love will lead me to the truth and help me to understand that life is all about love. So as we begin to wrap up the strategies I talked about, as you go through your week this week, if something comes up that causes you any kind of a challenge or a difficulty in your life, I just invite you to think for a minute, what's going on? How am I feeling about this situation or this relationship or this person? And more specifically, I want you to consider what kinds of questions are you asking? Are you asking what's wrong with them, or why did they do that? How can I fix this? And instead, the second thing, ask yourself is, what would love do? It can be an easy question, or it may be a difficult question for you, depending on the specific nature of the relationship or the thing. But I really invite you to hang out with it. Don't be quick. Just be with it. Be quiet with it. Hang out in that powerful inquiry, what would love do, and see what shows up. And you may get lots of insights and ideas that you wouldn't have thought of. But when you ask yourself this empowering question, you most surely will get a little bit of a deeper awareness and insight into what you could do if you allowed love to lead the way, right? You might get something inspiring as opposed to, well, interesting but not helpful, right? And the third thing is allow yourself to ponder and consider the question long enough until you really feel it in your bones. Because then when that happens, you start to get to the place of safe passage, right? Where the situation has safe passage, where the person has safe passage through your mind and heart. It doesn't create any kind of a, there's no me. I don't know how to spell that, but it's, it's a thing. And you might be called to take action, right? To be dynamic, to be bold, to be courageous. Or you might simply be peaceful and humble. It's not so much about what you do with it. It's more about what comes up and where it comes from. Because if you're coming from a deep place of love, you'll know it, you'll feel it, and hopefully you'll be able to bless them. There's a lot of opportunity these days to practice asking ourselves the bold question, what would love do? And when we're courageous enough to ask and to listen to the answers we receive, to act on them if necessary from a place of real love, compassion, and truth, we have the opportunity to transform our lives and relationships in a real way. And what's most important, what we all become then, is we become a spirit guide on the planet dressed in human clothing. And that's what the world, in my humble opinion, needs more of. So then the real question becomes, when do I start doing that? When do I start doing that? I want to close. So I invite you into prayer pose, whatever that looks for you. I'm going to begin our closing prayer with the words from Ernest Holmes in the User's Manual. Who is born of love is born of God, for God is love. Without love, nothing can be accomplished. With love, all things are possible. And when we love, our prayers are answered, and the gift of heaven is made. The gift of heaven is life and not death, love and not hate, peace and not confusion. And we enter into this paradise through the gateway of love toward one another and toward God. Love is greater than all else and covers a multitude of mistakes. Love overcomes everything and neutralizes all that is unlike itself. Love is God. And I know that there is only one power, one presence, one magnificent Father, Mother, nurturing being. It is the beginning, the end, the Alpha, the Omega, and everything in between. It has so many names, and yet no name. Because the English language, any language, is woefully inadequate to conjure, to summon all that it is. It is a presence and a power for good. It is love made incarnate in each and every being. And through this teaching, through this philosophy, through this way of life called the science of mind, I have been taught, and I believe more than anything else, that I am one with it. That all of the things God is, I am. God is love, and so am I. God is peace, and so am I. God is power and beauty and joy and wholeness, and so am I. And the other most magnificent thing that I have learned is that we're all one. We're all attached. We're all connected to our source, to each other. It's this beautiful tapestry, and I can't pull one string without watching the whole thing wiggle back and forth. We are all one, woven into this tapestry of love and greatness. And so whatever I could declare for myself, I can certainly right now, in this place, in this moment in time, speak that same word for each and every one of you. And we wrap and we incorporate our beloved Harriet and Jack and Julian into this prayer, knowing that love is a power that overcomes any obstacle. I know that a healing is happening right now as we speak, that quick. I know that my word has power. Even in Sanskrit, abracadabra means it is done as I speak. How powerful is our word? How powerful is our God? Our God is an awesome God. And so any appearance of lack or anything less than, any sense of illness, we just send that back into the nothingness from whence it came, and in its place is that goodness, that perfection, that wholeness in our Harriet, in this beautiful center which prospers and thrives because we say so. We don't tell our God about our problems. We tell our problems about our God. Oh, that makes me so happy. That gives me goosebumps. And I am filled with gratitude for this center for spiritual living, for all centers for spiritual living, for the people who walk through the doors and say yes. Yes to a life of possibility. Yes to showing up as love. Yes to exploring, what would love do? And from that place of gratitude, I don't have anything else except to giggle, because I just get so excited about God and people and everything that we're about. As I release my word, and if anything I said today rings true for you, please, please anchor this prayer with me by saying, and so it is.
And so it is, and so it is, and so it is, amen.
Thank you so much. Take care of one another, yes?